We're all here.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And we're going to have swearing in of officers. Let me, just before we do that, Tom Camarella asked me to let him say a couple of things at the beginning. He's a past president of the club, so I'm going to give him a special courtesy here, even though he's not on the agenda. But go ahead, Tom.
Well, I just wanted to say a few words as in this transition to our new president. We are so fortunate to have had Pete Rockwell for the last 2 years, and in a very difficult, politically disruptive time in our nation's history. Pete and his wife, Cynthia, have dealt with the COVID threat by learning to use Zoom effectively. We've had good meetings. We continue our learning programs. You helped grow our club and help the progressives keep hopes alive in Culver City. And you've stabilized our participation with the LACDP, our finances and membership, and done an exceptional job for the club. Ronnie and I would like to give a standing ovation for their clap. Really, really great job, guys. I appreciate it. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Appreciate the kind words, and it's been an honor to be president of the club. This will be my last meeting that I'm going to preside over, and I'm not even going to preside over the whole meeting. We're going to have on our first order of business the swearing in of officers, the new officers, and then I'm going to turn it over to the new president. So I'd like to introduce.
Before you get started, you've got something
You have
in the
to do it,
middle.
Tom, you have to do it.
This,
Tom,
what?
That's for you to click.
oh, I gotta click,
Yes,
okay,
you have to click, not being recorded.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll mute.
Yeah, let me, in general, people should mute and maybe even turn off their video when the program starts so we can save bandwidth. But I'm going to turn it over to Yasmin Imani McMorrin, City Council member, Yasmin. And she's going to swear in our new officers. Yasmin?
Thank you so much, Pete. I'm so happy to be here with all of you remotely. I hope everyone is hanging in there, sending lots of good energy. And I definitely want to echo the sentiments shared. Pete, you've been welcoming and just an amazing president. So thank you for your leadership. And you'll be missed in this role, but very excited for the new leadership. So with that being said, I guess, do I do one at a time or all together? How does this work? Because I see everyone's screens open, so it's not just
It's all together.
All together, yeah.
right, so I guess
It's gonna sound weird. That's okay.
it's okay. We're just gonna go with it, and we're gonna have a good time. So for all of our new Culver City Democratic Club leaders, can you please raise your right hand and I guess unmute yourself and repeat after me. I
Your name.
Cynthia
Tina Harris,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute
that I will
faithfully execute
the duties of the office I am about to assume.
the duties of the office that I'm about to assume.
That was a little long, sorry. Okay. I promise that
I promise
I promise that
I will uphold the bylaws
I will
I will uphold the bylaws
of the Culver City Democratic Club
The
the Culver City Democratic Club
and the principles and values
and the principles and values
of the Democratic Party.
of the Democratic Party.
I do so freely
I do so freely
and without mental reservation.
and without mental reservation.
Congratulations. So excited and proud of everyone. So I guess I'm passing it over to our new president, Jeff Swartz, and I'm just going to hang out. So thank you so much and congratulations, everyone. So excited for this upcoming year. Thanks.
Thank you, Yasmin. So the first item on our agenda is a poem from our recording secretary, Shannon Theus.
Thanks, you guys. So keeping up with the tradition, I will be reading 3 poems by other poets and then 1 by myself. And the reason why I do that is because I just feel like in our postmodern age, our job isn't necessarily to be creators as much as we should be curators. So I like to share my favorites with people and educate them as much as possible. So the first one is called Vote, and it's by Nikki Giovanni. It's not a hug, nor mistletoe at Christmas. It's not a colored egg at Easter, nor a bunny hopping across the meadow. It's a vote, saying you're a citizen. Though it sometimes is chocolate or sometimes vanilla, it can be a female or a male. It is right or left. I can agree or disagree, but, and this is an important but, I am a citizen. I should be able to vote from prison. I should be able to vote from the battlefield. I should be able to vote when I get a driver's license. I should be able to vote when I purchase a gun. I must be able to vote if I'm in the hospital, if I'm in the old folks' home, if I'm needing a ride to the polling place. I am a citizen. Folks were lynched. Folks were shot. Folks' communities were gerrymandered. Folks who believed in the Constitution were lied to, burned out, bought and sold because they agreed all men were created equal. Folks vote to make us free. It's not cookies nor cake, but it is the icing that is so sweet. Good for the folks, good for us. And that is vote. And so, just getting this together here. The next one that I'm going to read is called, this one is by Gwendolyn Brooks, and it's called The Last Quatrain of the Ballad of Emmett Till. I'm assuming everyone knows who Emmett Till is by now. It's called, okay, so after the murder, after the burial. Emmett's mother is a pretty-faced thing, the tint of pooled taffy. She sits in a red room, drinking black coffee. She kisses her killed boy, and she is sorry. Chaos and windy grays through a red prairie. And that is that. And the last of the others that I'm going to read, you're going to have to pardon me because I have different mediums. So some is on my phone, some is on my Kindle, some is on my journal. Okay, so this is James Baldwin. My beloved brother, I know your walk and love to hear you talk that talk, while your furrowed brow grows younger with wonder, like a small boy staring at the thunder. I see you somehow, about the age of 10, determined to enter the world of men. yet not too far from your mother's lap, wearing your stunning baseball cap. Perhaps then around 11, wondering what to take as given, and not much later going through the agony bequeathed to you. Then spun around, then going under, the small boy staring at the thunder. Then take it all and use it well, this manhood calculating through this hell. And that is James Baldwin. And so that concludes the three that I wanted to read. I kind of wanted to give an overview of the Black experience, I think, from three different perspectives there. And so this one is my own, and it's called Let My People Breathe. Go out, dark American. This be our promised land. So tell them, police, let my people breathe. When they reprimand and condemn innocent men and women, tell that party, let my people breathe. These states divided cannot stand, and yet you demand your sister's land and keep and bind your brother's hands. Tell them, systematic thieves, let my people breathe. For Spirit says, I am here. Sometimes I'm Black, at times I'm queer. So don't combat me in my eclectic sphere. You hear it bursting through the breeze. Let my people breathe. Spirit says, let my children out of cages. Pay my worker living wages. Repeal my nature from obsolete stages. The song comes humming throughout the seas. Let my people breathe. And that is the end. And thank you.
Yay!
Thank you, Shannon. The chat's disabled, so I can't write you a thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
A few people can't get into the meeting for some reason. Is there anyone in the waiting room?
Not as far as I can see.
Tad Daly's in the
we have
waiting
it.
room. Tad Daly's been having trouble getting in.
Oh, and now
Green is having trouble.
Yeah, we
And,
sent him a
and it's-
message.
Please allow us to chat.
I didn't know it wasn't working. Let's see what I can do.
I have chat,
Yeah, Cynthia has chat.
but I.
Right, but no one else.
If she's a co-host, she probably does have access to it, but the rest of us don't.
Oh, man. Let me
It's from
see
the
here.
forum. We didn't have chat from the forum.
Well, Pete, do you mind working on the settings? And we can.
It can't be changed now.
No, I think it can. Try it now.
It's working now.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep. See,
I think
look at
I
that.
think I just had to change one little setting right out here on the screen.
Okay,
Sorry about
okay.
that.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you, Pete.
So now I'll hand
That's one thing we got to do, Jeff. I got to tell you everything I know about Zoom so far. I'm just learning as I go.
Yes. So I'll hand the floor over to Akili. Very happy to have him back with our club. The last time he spoke, he told us about the work that Black Lives Matter LA was doing to protest Jackie Lacey's failure to prosecute police killings. And gosh, that seems like a really long time ago. And there have been some really important victories and tragedies since then. And I'm sure, there's a lot that we'll want to hear about in the next hour. So, Akili, the floor is yours.
And thank you. And I do remember being there and remembering advancing an argument that Black Lives Matters was looking for police accountability and justice for the families. And that message resonated with the people of Los Angeles, with the people of Los Angeles County, because we have a new district attorney. Now we have to fight to implement many of the reforms that we were looking to see in place, because we have run into a system along with people who want to hold on to yesterday no matter what. And you know, the information, the data, and all suggest that what BA Gascon is doing is direction that people want it, but some folks just can't get ready for it. They remind me, many of them, of the Trump supporters who are unwilling to accept the reality that they lost, and they lost badly. And so, you know, they are still trying to hold on. So as a matter of fact, we have been generally trying to support the reforms that we fought for, and support DA Gascon, because he, you know, one of the first things he did was meet with Black Lives Matters and the families. And we, shortly after he got elected, and even though we don't endorse candidates, the fact that he would reach out to us like that is an indication. So that was some time ago, and we are in a new day today. And we are in February, which is Black History Month. When I was growing up, this was Black History Week. And it had been started some 40 years earlier, 20 years earlier, by Carter Woodson, in an effort to kind of remind Negroes at the time about the fact that we were here, and that we had done one or two things. And I remember those weeks as they were, because I was in a segregated school. I grew up in the segregated South, in Jacksonville, Florida, where the custom, the law, and the practice reinforce your second-class status in society. But now we are in Black History Month, a short month, and we say Black History Month is January 1st, and it goes through December 31st. You know, it's all the months, but this has been designated Black History Month. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I wanted to focus on one person in particular. I'm the director of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute. And one of the reasons that we got started was because we all admired, all had reverence and respect for Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer because of who she was and what she did. And that she had a common touch, and that she connected with people where they were and moved them to where they needed to be and where they could be. And so we've started 3 years ago, the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute. We've done a number of community education forums. We've done some knowledge transfer sessions. And you know, we have generally tried, and we were very much involved in the last election. She is, like I said, someone that has moved us. But I want to set the stage, if I may. And you all have in your midst one of the people who was a part of this stage. If you remember, or if you know, that after the Civil War and during Reconstruction, Black people participated and voted in the South in great numbers, and really engaged in the civic activities of their day. At one time we had 8 members in Congress, and at least 4 senators. Now that's almost reversed. And there was an eagerness to participate on the part of enslaved people, and you could see the numbers of people who registered to vote. You could see the number of people who participated in the system. You could see the number of people who were elected, who were making public policy. As a matter of fact, one of the things that if you look at the concept of public education today, that came about because many of the people who were elected to public office at the national level and at the local level fought for public education. Then Reconstruction. And like that, we go from civic participation, engagement, to nothing, to being registered to vote and voting in large numbers, to nothing. In part because of the terror that went on, and because public policy was made to make it more difficult for Black people to register to vote and then to vote. And it after Reconstruction and the 1877 compromise, Jim Crow was introduced, and that was the law. Couple that and connect it to the customs and connect it to what people did in their lives, and you had Jim Crow lasting for over 150 years. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the late 50s and early 60s had been talking about the need for voter registration because they believe that if Black people in the Deep South in particular were registered and voted, that they could begin to change public policy at the local level. And in fact, that's what happened. And they started Freedom Summer. And one of the people on this call was a supporter, a participant, and an avid understander of the value of Freedom Summer, so much so that he went himself, and that's Rick Tuttle. And there are many people in Los Angeles, Bob Farrell, Dr. Singleton over at, I don't know, he's not at Laurel anymore, and Rick. Those were people who said, we can help, we can go, we can do something. And they did. And what they did was engage people in the Deep South, Black people in the Deep South, about their right to vote at great risk, as many can attest to. And one of the people that was very much involved in that Freedom Summer and making it real and looking at the need for voter registration was Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. Mrs. Hamer, and I have this, there are a number of books, but one that I've particularly appreciate and have had, I think it came out in 93, 94, This Little Light of Mine. And it talks about her and her struggles and who she was. And I want to focus on her now and then connect her to what you see in Stacey Abrams and all the sisters and brothers in the Deep South who have been fighting, to not only to register and to be civically engaged, but to have their voices consistently and regularly heard. Mrs. Hamer grew up on a plantation in Mississippi, and had according to the book and the way that the author, she had the comment, people came to her because she listened to people, she was a problem solver, and she got things done. And people would listen to her. So when the SNCC volunteers and the SNCC staff came through Ruleville, Mississippi, and they talked to people about registering to vote, she was one of the first to do it. She was one of the first to sign up. She was one of the first to say, yes, we can do this. And in those days, you had to go to the courthouse to register to vote. And you had to take a test. And most people failed the test. Most people were not, you could never pass this test. And even if you tried, once you did it, everybody in the area knew about it. And you were at risk. I remember in 1960, when my mother registered to vote and came back and announced it in the house, my grandmother was concerned. She was thinking and expressed it, girl, I could lose my job. Don't say that, no, don't tell nobody. Now, my mother was proud of it. My grandmother, on the other hand, was concerned because, she worked for white folks. If that got back to those white folks, she could lose her job. That's how important and difficult and challenging, just the simple concept, something that we take for granted today, registering to vote. Fannie Lou Hamer, along with the SNCC organizers in the area, decides, yes, I'm going to register to vote. I can do that. We can do that. The other thing about Mrs. Hamer that I learned about from people who knew her and worked with her, Heather Booth, by the way, was one of the people who was most influenced. Heather Booth, who did the Midwest Academy and who's still very active today, used to talk unendingly about her. Reverend Lawson talks about her because he did a number of trainings with her. But the common touch she has, and what I mentioned before, the problem solver, people look to her. One of the things that she did that they talk about was that, you know, she only had about a 6th grade education, but she could count, and she knew that her parents were being shortchanged. And so she wound up being the record keeper, and she stood up for folks on the plantation and in the community when they were being cheated, and spoke out about that. So she already had the courage. So the SNCC organizers take her, and she goes and registers to vote, and she feels good about it. But she's met when she gets back, because the word gets out that, you know, you came down there to register to vote. And she was met on the plantation by the plantation owner. And that plantation owner demanded that she go and take her name off the rolls. And Mrs. Hamer said, I didn't register to vote for you, I registered to vote for me. And he insisted. And she said no. He put her off the plantation. That night, he put her off. Now, luckily, she had some place to go, but within the course of 12 hours, she's put off her plantation, you know, and she has to live with people, and they shoot up her house. They shoot in her house 15 times just for doing that. That's an example, I think, of the strength of courage that she had. The other thing that stands out for me, her strength and her courage, they are registering people to vote. The police stop them and give them a citation for the school bus that they're on is the wrong color. And they start taking people to jail. And they take her and the other volunteers to jail. And they start beating them. And she is beaten badly by the trustees, the Black trustees. And it cost her, we think, many of us think, that those beatings contributed to her early and untimely death. But she took those beatings. And I often think to myself, could I have done that? Could I have taken those beatings? Could I have said, okay, well, I'll leave the plantation? And I don't know. I'd like to think I would, but I gotta tell you, I don't know. Those are the qualities that she had. One last thing, as they developed the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and wanted to be seated at the convention in 1964, they had their own pre-conventions, and in Mississippi, they had their own shadow, if you will, Democratic Party that registered people, that had a convention, that elected delegates, that sent them to a broad, you know. So the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was an example of the democratic process that she and others wanted to see. And they took their case to the National Party to be seated, because they felt that the all-white Democratic Party at the time, which had purposely, deliberately, and methodically excluded them, needed to be changed. And so they challenged at the Credentials Committee. And one of the most powerful 3 minutes, almost 4 minutes that you could ever see is her testimony at the Credentials Committee at the Democratic Party. It was so powerful that President Johnson called a press conference at the same time she was supposed to testify, to announce that it had been 9 months since the murder of John F. Kennedy. Now that was not news, but he was so concerned that her testimony would have the impact that it ultimately wound up having, that he called a press conference to do it, to try to knock her off the front page. It backfired because people resisted, and the news media at the time resisted and resented that, and they played her whole testimony the next day. And it got more played than than it would have had he not tried to block it. I want to mention those three things. The fact that she registered to vote and she gets put off the plantation and has to live someplace else and gets her home shot up. The fact that she is beaten badly because she registered to vote, and the fact that that her testimony so concerned the President of the United States that he would try to overshadow it. Dr. King testified at that same credentials hearing, and other people did. And the president didn't come out and try to, overshadow them. It was Fannie Lou Hamer. I say that to give you a glimpse of the person and why, we are celebrating her this year. The LA County Democratic Party just passed a resolution yesterday in supporting Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer and the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute, along with the party, the New Democratic Frontier Club, Black Women's Democratic Club, and Law Choir are co-sponsoring a Black History Month celebration and remembrance of Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. I wanted to introduce that to you and then connect that to the work that Black women have been doing in the South for years, leading up to Stacey Abrams and what that whole effort that she and others engaged in. And this has been, certainly for Ms. Abrams, a 2.5-year process. It didn't start with this election. It started when her election was stolen from her, when she ran for governor. But people had been involved in registration and civic engagement before that. You saw it in Alabama. You saw what Black women did there. You saw what happened in Florida with Measure 1, which restored the rights of formerly convicted people. The franchise was restored to them. And a lot of that was led, developed, and advanced by Black women. And this party, in many ways, owes its salvation to the work of Black people and Black women in particular. Black women have been the backbone, have been the shoulder bone, have been the arms and legs in many, many cases in this party. And I wanted, because this is Black History Month, I wanted to highlight that. I'm hoping that we can move this recognition that the county party has established to the state party, because this is a person that opened up the Democratic Party in ways that many of us sitting around here now have benefited from. Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer sacrificed, contributed, and made real the democratic process in ways that we all have benefited from. So I want to stop there now and try to have a discussion and take some of your questions. But I also wanted to take the time to lift up Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity.
Well, thank you. That was great. Tom Camarella has texted me a question, so I'm going to take the liberty of asking that first for him, and then the other members can put their questions in the chat and I'll call on them to ask them. Tom wants to know, what was the outcome of your meeting with the LA City Council about the budget hearings? He says it was really excellent, but he wants to know if anything changed.
Well, let me give you a little bit of context and background. Black Lives Matters LA is part of and the leading source of the People's Budget LA. And we have been meeting with, we've done a couple of things. The first thing we did was bring people together who had a common interest, common concern, but that grew out of the interest conditions in the Black community. So it started with first a series of Black demands as to deal with Black folks in relationship to COVID-19. That then led us to that we were being disproportionately disaffected, if you will. And that led us to more discussions, and other people's concerns were beginning to brought in, and the People's Budget LA was started. And it's centered around divest and invest, that the mayor had proposed a 3% increase in the LAPD, which would have given them 54% of the budget. And many of us, and BLM LA has opposed that budget for over 5 years. Every time it comes out, we oppose it and we offer alternatives. So this is not new for us. But this particular time, that 3% increase was really egregious. And other people agreed, People's Budget LA, and we wanted to focus on human needs and universal concepts that people felt were in the city, needed in the city. And it's centered around participatory budgeting. And we developed a platform where we would ask candidates and elected officials to engage in and support participatory budgeting. The other thing that we did was in about a 6-week period of time, a little less than 6 weeks, we surveyed and interviewed over 25,000 people around what they felt was the emphasis that needed to happen within the city and the budget. And what we came back with was many people felt that there needed to be more investment in universal needs than the police. And we presented that to a committee of the city council, and we engaged Bonham, at the time Wesson, and Harris. Price, and others to support this participatory budgeting process and the divest, invest. And many people get upset when we say defund the police, and we say it all the time. We got shirts that say that, but it's really divest, invest. And so meeting with the city council members that supported the participatory budgeting process, that's how we began we got input, that's how we engage people, and that's how we advanced this concept of divest, invest. The mayor, because there were thousands of people in the streets demanding change, not immediately, but rushed to cut the budget by $250 million. And that 250 was supposed to go to, to Black and brown communities. That wound up being reduced to about $150 million, which is now about $88 million that the police are trying to get back. But that is the result of the protests first, and the heavy price that Black people must pay, have paid in order to make the kind of change that we say this society needs. So we continue to engage with city council members. We had a meeting with the staff of Margaret Thomas, who is the new city council member in 10. And your own city council member, Daniel Lee, has been out in front on this almost ever since we got started. But certainly shortly after we got started, he was one of the first to sign on to the participatory budgeting process. He was one of the first people to help us reach other people to get surveys, to get the surveys filled out. So he was out in front on this almost from the beginning. So that's kind of a little bit about that particular coalition. We are seeking now to meet with other elected officials, and we have even asked for a meeting with the mayor. Now for BLM, that is going a long way because we spent 23 days at his house to block him from being appointed to the cabinet. So us meeting with him, or even seeking to meet with him, I mean, in part because BLM doesn't meet with police chiefs and we don't meet with mayors, because we know that those are public relations meetings. They're not substantive policy making meetings. They're show for the police, they're show for the mayor. So we generally don't do that. But this is one time where we think maybe if we can have a discussion around this, the people's budget, then there may be a reason to communicate. So that's kind of where we are. Long answer to what I thought was a good question. So I'll try to keep my responses much more concise.
Next question is from Gina, the original Vice President Harris.
The original VP Harris. I will never be the same. I mean, just to be in the same similar role and have the same last name.
That's
I
great.
mean, yeah, that's kind of crazy. But Baba Akili, I have over the summer, over this past year, I've created some safe space, for, white people, other races to come and talk and feel safe discussing some things that they might not feel safe discussing on social media. And of course, defund the police was the trigger word of the century. Defund is now a trigger word. And I said that was I always say I'm not speaking on behalf of Black Lives Matter, the organization, because I am not a representative of the organization. I am a Black woman whose life matters. But I explain it that, the reason why defund, I feel like defund is being used is because for decades, people have been asking for police reform, community investment, and it went unheard. We watched Rodney King get beat in the 90s, and police reform was being screamed at the top of people's lungs and nobody listened. So, but then now everyone says defund the police. And now you're saying, even from one of our formal presidents, we need to kind of tone that down. I'm just trying to make sure, am I explaining it correctly to say defund was the point to get your attention because you didn't hear us when we said reform? Is that,
It in some ways, but you have to understand that BLM is an abolitionist organization.
Well,
that given we would abolish the police. So the defund comes from the divest invest, because what we have seen over the past certainly 40 years is a divestment within Black communities and an increase in policing and over-policing and the criminalization of Black and brown people, which has resulted in us leading the city in deaths, which is not something that we want to hold up as a triumph. And it's very clear when you look at the city budget. My old boss, Antonio Villaraigosa, ran on the principle of increasing the police to 10,000. And when he was a candidate, the city budget was about 45% of it, maybe as much as 47 went to the police. He wanted to increase it by bringing on 10,000 police officers. And that tipped it toward 50% of the city's budget is going for one thing: policing. And they wrap it in this terms of public safety. Well, we know what makes us safe. Resources make us safe because we can look at other communities and see that they have resources and they don't have over-policing. And so the defund is divest, invest. And you can take that to the national level. And I respect Senator Sanders and others who tried to get a divest, invest, 10% of the military budget, just 10% of a bloated budget for human service needs. And you couldn't do that because the military has become untouchable. So, and that's how it is at the local level. Police have become untouchable. And if you couple that with the overemphasis and the criminalization of Black people, because we are all gang members, of course. If you didn't know no better, you would think, well, I lived in a community where there's a gang member on every corner and they shooting back and forth at each other. It's not like that at all. There is certainly some violence and some community violence that can be dealt with, and we've learned how to deal with it and are learning how to deal with it, but we know, and it's not through policing. So the defund the police grew out of that very principle: defund them. So, and it means divest and invest. Divest from the police and invest in people in the communities.
Thank you. I think that
it does frighten some people, though.
No, I think that, the media turned that narrative. I think that's what happened, and it does frighten people. And I think that, especially going on with what happened over the summer, I think people got really scared. And that's why I started talking to people outside of the social media world and trying to really explain what you said, the divest, invest, and how we were isolated and all that stuff. So thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure, because like I said, I'm not speaking from, I'm not the Black Lives Matter organization. When I talk to people, I'm speaking as a Black woman whose life matters. And I just wanted to, make sure that my messaging is still on par with the messaging overall.
Thank you. And I'm on the core team of Black Lives Matter LA, and that's our leadership team. And then we have an action team, and then we have a series of teams around specific areas of interest. And one of them is police accountability. And we spend a lot of time on that. Every Tuesday, we go to the police commission because that's where technically policy is made. Now, they have used the pandemic, if you will, to pretty much try to silence us. They only give us 45 minutes to testify. And one of the things I want to raise here and now is, why does all the civic institutions meet on Tuesday? The county meets on Tuesday. Many of the city council committees meet on Tuesday. The police commission meets on Tuesday. If you want to be civically engaged, it's not easy. If there was no pandemic, trying to go downtown on a Tuesday morning to participate at a police commission meeting or a board of supervisors meeting or a committee of the city council, it really is tough. I mean, in the sense, the message that we really don't want civic engagement. We want to do it just based on our time and what's good for us, not what's good for the people we represent. So that is something that certainly BLM and others have been raising. First, why are all the meetings on Tuesday? Secondly, why are you constricting public comments to 25 minutes, a half hour, or 45 minutes? If you want real public input, yes, there will be some crazies who jump up in there and say whatever, but the bulk of the testimony, the bulk of the sharing is people's real interests and concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Anything other people would like to raise? Cynthia?
Oh, so many questions. I was really excited by DA Gascon's proposed reforms, or the reforms. He just said, "Yeah, hey, we're gonna change the world now," but he's being challenged in court by the deputy DAs. What do you think are the chances that he'll be able to continue his reform agenda, and what can we in the grassroots do to support him?
I think he'll be able to continue because he's put around him a group of very smart and committed people, the same group that helped get him elected. And I want to remind us that Gascon is not some aberration that kind of floated in. He was voted in by the people. He got 54% of the vote. I mean, so this is not some kind of, and it wasn't even close, you know what I mean? So people wanted change and they voted for it. And I think that because of that, he has the grounding that he needs. And what we and others in the community have done, we've moved the Jackie Lacey Must Go coalition to now it's the progressive, what is it? The Progressive Reform Coalition, and there is a DAA coalition that also, and there are a number of groups that have come together to support the positions that we have been arguing for many years. Gascon simply reflects what the people have been demanding. And so I think, part of it, I think, has got to be, we had a press conference in Raleigh the day that the case was heard to express our support for the positions and the reforms that we have been demanding. And I think that those kinds of things, and we will be doing more of that through our coalitions and through the work that we're having. We will be doing more public actions and letter to the editors and a number of ways of showing that we This is what we wanted. This is what we voted for. This is what we have been demanding. And you know, one of the things, I should tell you this about Black Lives Matter. We are Black-centered, demand-driven, and direct action focused. We engage in those, you know, what we want grows out of a set of demands that Black people have put forward. And we will engage in direct action. We will not just do a press conference and say, y'all need to change this. We will engage people. We will show up and we will challenge, confront, and disrupt if need be in order to make the change that we have been demanding for many years. You know, so, and that is one of the things that those three elements, the Black-centered, demand-driven, and direct action focus has helped us advance this concept of Black Lives Matter. One of the things that we found very interesting, a recent Loyola poll showed that 78% of the people in the city supported us. Another part of that poll said that 62% of the people want to see the public funds redirected. 47% of the people actually supported for defunding the police, and 37% of the people supported dismantling the police altogether. And I remember when that was shared at the police commission by your Loyola group that did the surveys and came back with the report, and it was they couldn't believe it, their jaws dropped. But I think people support the Black Lives Matter concept. What we have done as the Black Lives Matter organization is take those concepts and fight to make them real.
Pete, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to not so much ask a question, but just tell you, Akili, we invited George Gascon to be the speaker here in a month, and I'm waiting to hear if he's going to confirm. He was open to the idea. We wanted to get a bunch of other Democratic clubs to get in on the Zoom meeting too. So, and we told him in the email we want to help accomplish what he's trying to accomplish, and he could let us know what we can do. So I just wanted to let you know that we're still waiting to hear if he can do it for sure.
As a matter of fact, I think that would be good for the party as a whole. After all, the party supported him. Yeah. You know, if you remember correctly, the whole county Democratic the party supported him. I think that it would be incumbent upon the party. I mean, for people who stand with you, you have to stand with them. You know, and if they identify with you and support what you are doing, then you have to identify and support them. I want to give a quick shout out to my sister, Michelle Reed. And I want to say that as Black Lives Matters was starting, we went from a hashtag and a discussion to an organization. And that organization started forming in Ferguson. And many of us took vans back to Ferguson, Missouri. And Sister Michelle was a part of the vans that went back there for the establishment of Black Lives Matter, the organization. It moved in Ferguson. It went from the discussion phase that Patrice, Alicia, and Oprah were having, and other people were having through social media, to an organization. Over 600 of us came together, and it became Black Lives Matters, the organization in Ferguson. And Michelle was there with us. She was in the vans with us. She was uncomfortable with us. She saw what was happening there, and I'm glad to see that she is here and supportive and participated with the Culver City Club. So I just want to
thank you, Brother Akili. Much appreciated you. We've been through some journeys and we still going.
Yep.
Thank you, Ashe.
I see that Tad has a question in the chat. Tad, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, yeah, thanks, President Schwartz. Baba, thank you for your stirring presentation. I apologize that I'm not as well informed about this particular question as I might be, but I wonder if you could explain, what are the beefs that you and BLM have with Mayor Garcetti?
We have principled policy differences. We want to end state-sanctioned violence in all its forms, social, political, and economic. Mayor Garcetti is a part of the current institutions that don't get that, that don't understand that, and are not willing to deal with it. And so we say we want to end state-sanctioned violence. Well, one of the things about state-sanctioned violence that's critical for us is police accountability. And he has not been willing to, or certainly has not expressed any willingness to be a part of holding police accountable. He has not been a part of, at least that I can see, the divest invest that we have been talking about, unless forced. And then during the summer after the George Floyd killing, and the country kind of, many whites in the country, you know, it's like, whoa, wow, how could that happen? And they were disgusted by it, and millions of people around the world, you know, was outraged by it. He responded and did some things, but they were not. It was an effort to try to, well, let's just do something, kind of stuff. It was not connected to any set of demands that we had been putting forth with him almost since our existence. We called for early on the firing of Beck. We called for a revamping of the police commission, because it's 5 people who are appointed by the mayor. You know, these are political positions, and they tend to defend the police. They defend the institution that they're there to represent. And so we have differed with him on policy almost since his election. And the other thing about Garcetti is that he has no limit. Well, he has limited presence, relationships, and participation within the Black community. Once he got elected, there was very little evidence of him or his presence that I could see. One of the good things that I think that he did was appointing Jimmy Woods Gray, and he certainly had a relationship there. But overall, for many of us, we didn't see that. And so we differ with him on policy. We differ with him on police accountability. We differ with him on the issue of the police commission. We differ with him on the divest invest. And we see these as legitimate principal differences, and that we are going to use every available tool that we have to, as the mayor, hold him accountable. The other thing, one last thing about Garcetti that many of us, and I've known Eric for a long time, and certainly one of the things I admired about Garcetti, because I used to get these calls from people who were on the Obama campaign. He was one of the first people who signed up. He was this boy went to Iowa and walked precincts in the cold and shit. And people were calling me like, who is this? And so there is that. But one of the things that has disappointed us the most is his effect of understanding Black people and not really understanding Black people. He's a classic, what we like to call, liberal that because he's been around Black people, because he got some, connection with some Black folks, that helps him, that he thinks that he understands us better than we do. That attitude has done more than anything that I know, I think, in dampening our relationships. You don't know, because you've been around a few Black people. I worked for the NAACP. I've known Ben longer than most. He and I were on boards together. But I don't say that to say that I know everything about Ben. Garcetti too often comes off as a classic white liberal who thinks he knows more about us than we do. And if it ain't for us, it ain't about us. And that has been one of the biggest things that many of us, certainly within the Black Lives Matter movement, has resented and resisted. You don't know us better than we know ourselves, and you don't know our needs. And we have told him, or certainly attempted to try to tell him that. And so we have developed what we consider to be a principled adversarial position with him.
Well, that's I think a good transition to a question one of our members sent me, which maybe is also a good place to wrap up, which is what are the ally groups that are most useful in Los Angeles, and where can white allies go to support BLM?
The best one has been White People for Black Lives, and they grow out of Surge. And I remember when they approached us early on, and we were like, wait a minute. But one of the things that we had to make sure people know that we are Black-led and Black-centered. And so if you want to participate with us, you have to accept that. You know, and some people can't do that, quite frankly. You know what I mean? But White People for Black Lives has really worked to do that. They do a political education to work with, you know, to teach people how to do that. They have classes, they go to great length to do that. That has been one of the best. And then they have had a rippling effect, I think, in terms of how you deal with, how you are a good accomplice, not just an ally, a good accomplice. But that starts with accepting Black leadership, accepting Black positions, and accepting Black understandings. And too often, certainly over my somewhat 50 years, that's not always been the case. We want to build relationships based on mutual respect, mutual support, and mutual benefit. And if you come at us with you think you know, or like, you know, I was saying about the mayor, you won't get very far with us. As a matter of fact, you won't get nowhere with us. We are a Black-led organization, Black-centered in our decisions and our emphasis and in our policies. And not everybody's down with that, because there's some belief that there ought to be a role for white people. Yeah, it is. And with us, it's you are an accomplice. You can be an ally, but you can't lead what we do. And I would encourage y'all to hook up with White People Black Lives. Like I said, they got some good programs, they do great education, and they have grown and developed as we have grown and developed.
Great, thanks. Last call for questions.
Well, let me do this. Let me thank you all for your courtesy, for your willingness to hear me out, for your interest in even wanting to hear what we are doing, what our understanding is, and what our focus is. And I appreciate that. You know, too often people make assumptions about us. They don't know, you know, they know of us, but they don't know about us. You know, and what they see is in many ways a narrow projection of us. We are 7 years old. Think about a 7-year-old and how, you know, like all 7-year-olds, our muscles are being coordinated better. We can talk a little bit better. We don't always listen, you know, that kind of stuff. But in our development, in our advancement, I am blessed to be around, I'm 73, 72, I'll be 72. I'm blessed to be in rooms with 24-year-olds and 30-year-olds who have a different understanding, who have a different position, who have a different perception about how to make substantive, transformative change, not transactional, not just reform. And I am learning from them. And the other, I think, key feature of Black Lives Matters overall, but certainly Black Lives Matters LA, it is women-led, women-developed, and women-advanced. And women bring a different style of leadership. Women bring a different style of decision-making. Women bring a different style of collectiveness that has, I think, helped BLM grow, sustain itself, and be successful. And for me, as a longtime activist and organizer, I'm pleased to be associated with it. I'm learning all the time, and I'm remembering a lot too. So I appreciate the fact that y'all opened the door for me and invited me in. I hope that what I've shared, y'all you can see and accept. And I hope y'all keep the door open. I'd like to walk through it again.
Akili.
Yes, please.
Yes, a quick question, you know, not a question. Can you share with them the the website or the information for the white people to join in. It's a special one that Melina spoke about a few meetings ago.
And White People for Black Lives has a website, and it's called that, White People for Black Lives, .org. And you all, and the other thing is we have, this is not a drill Thursdays, where you're welcome to join on Facebook Live. And we try to have topical, we try to talk about topical issues with people around the country. And you know, so you're always welcome to find out more about us that way. But for White People for Black Lives, I would encourage you to go to that. And it's just .org. They have regular meetings, regular education sessions, and they have a whole series of sessions on what they call de-emphasizing. That is, the emphasizing whiteness and de-emphasizing whiteness and lifting up the humanness of all of us. It's a very good program. I've observed it, and I've learned a lot from it.
Great, thanks for underlining that again, and thank you again for joining us tonight.
And I would ask you to invite in some people from White People for Black Lives. It would be worth it. I think that, you know, that they could share a lot of what they do, why they do it, and some of the outcomes that they've been engaged in. So I would encourage you to invite them in.
Yeah, our new Vice President, Freddie Puza, has been very active in leading that at Loyola.
Good. So I would invite you all to invite them in. Thank you all so much. I really appreciated it. And I really appreciate your willingness to hear me and to be courteous and supportive.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
So you're welcome to stick around, but the club business will probably be kind of boring.
What? No, I can't believe that.